Recently, a terrorist attack happened in Moscow, Russia, and it is hard for me to talk about this, and I hope that you are prepared for this video. I will not share any footage, I just want to discuss this tragedy and look how the government reacted to this, what is the mood among the Russian people, and I want to share my thoughts and feelings about this. So on March 22, several assailants opened fire on people in the Crocus City Hall. It is a concert hall in Moscow. Then there was a big fire and 143 people lost their lives and more than 500 are injured. As for now, we know that this was most likely ISIS, and even though the Western intelligence services warned Russia several days before that, Russian President Putin said that all was blackmailing to destabilize the Russian society. FSB, the Russian Federal Security Service, has already detained the suspects, and immediately the Russian state media found a way to accuse Ukraine of this attack. They say that the suspects were moving towards the Ukrainian border where a window was opened for them. And I have a question, who was going to open this window for them from the Russia side of the border? And this attack in Crocus had a terrifying effect. People are scared, people are mourning, bringing flowers to the memorials. And of course, one might argue that Ukraine has been experiencing the same feelings for 2 years already, and maybe someone even can say that, oh, these Russians supported the war anyway, it serves them right. And I disagree with this because, first of all, we don't know who among these victims and the mourning people really supported the war, and even if they did, they still don't deserve to die for this. I believe in justice through legal means, and if we let these vengeful thoughts consume our minds, we are no different from terrorists, and there should be no division into nationalities here. And also, it was interesting to think among those people who are grieving now in Russia. Probably there are some people who ardently supported the war. Of course, not the majority of them, and I want to emphasize that not the majority of Russians are these core supporters of the invasion, but still there are some people like this. And I wonder, do they feel the same grief about victims of the Russian bombs in Ukraine? Probably they do feel sorry, but they think that this war is justified and such losses are inevitable. Or maybe, and again, this is probably a small amount of people, but still, maybe they think that they don't care about Ukrainians because the Russian state media is doing a good job in dehumanizing Ukrainians. But anyway, I want to return to this recent attack in Crocus. And now I want to talk about the videos where the detainees are tortured by the FSB. So these suspects were abused so much so that they were even taken to the court in the wheelchair, and actually in the past years there have been a lot of such footage online coming from the Russian security forces, so it is not a novelty. And I personally think that this is disgusting, it should not be like this, and maybe momentarily it will satisfy those Russians who seek retribution, but in the long run it only erodes our sense of justice and trust to the government, and it will not bring the victims back, it will only discredit the Russian government even more. And due to the suspects being from Tajikistan, there has been a surge of xenophobia in Russia. This applies both to people born in Russia but belonging to ethnic minorities and to working immigrants from Central Asian countries. Such people often struggle to find housing or employment, and they experience everyday racism, So after this attack, there have been many cases. For example, a video appeared where young guys attacked a girl from Yakutia, making a Nazi salute and screaming "Russia is for Russians." And also people messaged to taxi drivers, "If you are a Tajik, I will not go with you." Or when the security forces raided migrants' workplaces, seeking for those who avoid military service. And also in one of the cities, a stall where migrants usually work was set on fire, and many other cases like this. Manizha, a singer of Tajik origin who represented Russia on Eurovision 2021, posted a video message where she condemned both the torture of detainees and the growth of xenophobia towards Central Asians in Russia. And unfortunately, this once again proves the notion that evil knows no borders, and when Russia started evil in Ukraine, it returned back to Russia and now harms people even more. And recently, the Russian government adopted a new bill that releases people from jail, the people who have committed very serious crimes, including murders, rapes, and now these people will be freed if they go to the special military operation, sign a contract with the Russian military. They will be let out to the Russian streets eventually if they will not die there at the front. And some of them will stay alive and return to our hometowns. And this is terrifying. And I don't understand what Putin is thinking about when he signs such bills. It just shows that he wants to get more soldiers by any means. And now I want to talk about the reasons of this attack, how it was possible. And it's crucial to understand that the FSB and other security forces in Russia have enormous power, and a lot of governmental money is allocated to their salaries. Given that, it is astonishing how FSB could overlook this attack. They're still doing some work, and there were cases in the recent months when they did prevent some attacks in Russian cities, but for some reason they overlooked this one. Also, Moscow got a nickname Digital Gulag because there are cameras at every step. But the government is using these cameras to track and detain people for participating in protests. And come on, the security forces have been really busy with terrorizing regular people. And this is what angers me the most, because several months ago the Russian Supreme Court recognized sexual minorities as a part of the International LGBT Association, banning its activities on the territory of Russia. And this attack in Crocus happened on the 22nd of March. And that very day, but just several hours before that, the government has included this international LGBT movement into the list of terrorist and extremist organizations. And recently a first criminal case about this appeared when two people were arrested in the city of Orenburg for working in a gay club, and now they can face up to 10 years in prison for participating in the international LGBT movement and spreading the propaganda of non-traditional sexual relationships. And with every day this is getting more and more ridiculous, because people are already detained for sending LGBT emojis or for wearing earrings with rainbow. And this is scary because after this attack the Russian government has started these eternal conversations about bringing the death penalty back. It is scary because now the government include so many decent people into the list of the extremists and terrorists. There are many prominent Russian public speakers, writers such as Boris Akunin, activists, artists, and so on. And I hope that more and more people will wake up and think why the government is chasing these imaginary enemies in the face of LGBT and not preventing the real threat. I don't know how many people will start thinking about this. Maybe there's some other strata of people who will trust the government even more because Now they are terrified and lost, and unfortunately the government will use this fear and anger to fuel the war in Ukraine even more. And it is disheartening to me that there likely will not be any consequences. Because in the countries where an open discussion is encouraged, such incidents usually lead to investigations, and the people who were responsible for this but let this happen are held accountable. But in Russia, appointments to top security positions are based on their loyalty to Putin rather than on their competence. And as a result, things are likely to stay unchanged, and I fear to say this, but there might be similar attacks in the future. So this is how the Putin's fifth presidential term started. And I'm so tired of discussing politics and all these events on my channel, but at the same time it's also interesting for me to make such videos, because when something like this happens, I usually watch a lot of Russian opposition media, news. I want to digest this somehow and to share this with you, to share what now is going on in the Russian public and the minds of the dissidents in Russia. So this is the end of this video, and I want to ask you to like it or write any comment, because here I used a lot of words that YouTube might not like, and maybe YouTube will not promote this video to a broader audience, so I want more people to see it. I hope that you are safe and you take care of yourself. Goodbye, пока-пока.